Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I am your host, Ricky Camilleri. Lynn Shelton is one of the most subtle, humane directors working right now with films like Hump Day, Laggies, Your Sister's Sister, and now Outside In. There's a lot of other films in between there, too, that I left out. It's the story of an ex-con who falls for the high school teacher that kept in touch with him while he was in prison. Let's take a look at the trailer.
We're a free man in America. Look at this! His first beer in 20 years!
Okay, everybody, Chris's high school teacher's here. If it wasn't for you, Chris would still be in jail.
Holy moly. You're real.
You're gonna come over and you can get to know Hildy and Tom.
He's here. Congrats on your release. Maybe now I can get my wife back.
A lot of guys get out and think they're free, but you're not free yet. Not by a long shot.
Okay. You go up here to file.
So, what is the most different?
Smartphones, whatever everyone's obsessed with.
What was it like? How'd you get through it?
Your mom is what got me through it.
Where were you?
I was with Chris.
Oh.
I'd rather you not bring your charity work home.
Come on, put it on.
Get out of here.
I just want a simple life. Come home every day to somebody that I love and be good to them. I want you.
Chris, I have to save my marriage. Oh, my God. Tom, we can be friends.
We're not friends. You're the only person I can talk to. You're everything to me.
You have a whole big new life in front of you. How could you possibly know that it's me that you want?
Everybody, the great Lynn Shelton. Let's hear it. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Ricky.
It's a pleasure to talk to you. I'm a big fan of your work.
Thanks.
Let's talk about, I mean, your first, not your first film, but I guess you could call it your breakthrough film was Hump Day, right? Which was kind of co-written with Mark Duplass, right? Or
No, it was written for him.
written for him, excuse me.
And all the dialogue was improvised.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, listen, I'm very collaborative, and especially I've started many of my projects because of the muse of a particular actor, because I'm kind of actor obsessed. And in this case, it was Mark's brother, Jay Duplass, who I'd known and before as a radiant, wonderful, sweet, souled human being and a filmmaking peer. And then he came right out of the gate as an actor, deciding he wanted to start acting, and saw him in Transparent as Josh Pfefferman, and just was blown away by how great he was. Like, you know, he's stunning. He's very emotionally available. He's very nuanced. He's very real. I just loved him. And so I told him I'd be lightly stalking him until we got on set together. But yeah, with going back just briefly to Hump Day, what I had developed was this idea that I actually started with my second film, My Effortless Brilliance, was this technique of involving the actors heavily early on in the process, if possible, to build their own backstory, create a character with and for them, so that it would sort of fit them like a glove by the time we get on set together, and it'll just feel as real as possible. And then improvisation in that case was a really important part of it as well. So both Joshua Leonard and Mark Duplass, and eventually Alicia Dale Moore, who plays Mark's wife, were all heavily, got a lot of input from them along the way. And then I would pare it down and figure out exactly how it would work in the plot of the thing. So, yeah, and then the final draft of the script is really written, it always is, but in this case, really in the edit room. I mean, there were so many versions of that movie that could have been made ultimately. So, yeah. But anyway, that's how that happened. But this was much more traditional in terms of there was an actual script written. But when I pitched it to him, it was just the backstory. It was really like, all right, this guy's just getting out of prison after being 20 years, and he's obsessed with this high school teacher who helped him. And so I sort of had everything up to the minute the movie starts, and that's kind of what I presented to him. And didn't know if he'd be interested. I mean, this guy that he plays there's not a lot of overlap in life experience of this character with Jay himself. And so it was a bit of a, he really had to stretch himself to find this guy, and I didn't know if he'd be interested in that or not, and he was so into it. He was so excited, and he did tons of research, and he really threw himself into it and became so deeply engaged that eventually we started trading drafts of the script back and forth, and then he became officially a co-writer at that point.
I think it takes a lot of bravery to play a character like this, not because of just where the character has to go, but to engage with a member of the working class like this, to engage with someone who has the backstory that this character has, and not feel in any way like a phony. I think a big star can do it in a big Hollywood movie, and talk about some kind of research that they did, but there's still a very small window that they have to kind of fit into to sort of make that performance happen. With something like this, he's walking you're putting him on a tightrope, if that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree, and we were just very, very conscious of that. And
hard to hide in this movie is what I'm kind of saying,
Yes, it really is, because it really is all about. It's really all about vulnerability. And I mean, Edie is like Edie Falco, who plays Carol, his high school teacher, is. She can really, literally do no wrong. That woman is.
Question doesn't go to Edie. That
It's
question
incredible.
is just like, good job, you knocked it out of the park again, Miss Falco. Thank you.
I know. Although what's really cool is it's funny because the iconic roles she's known for, both Nurse Jackie and Carmela Soprano, are so hard as nails. Like, they're so different. And this woman is so vulnerable and sort of kind and very just so conscientious, and it is a different role for her on screen that we've seen before. Or she's known for anyway, the kinds of roles she's known for. But yeah, her range is insane. She's so good.
How did you find comfort as a storyteller when you found your footing and had a breakthrough with a movie like Hump Day, where, as you said, you had this very long process where you got to really work on the backstory and figure everything out with your actors and have these kind of whittle down processes, or really find the story. And now when you're working on something like this, it seems like you might have to move a little faster. You might have to kind of move your scenes along quicker and get to the places that are the story points. How do you find that comfort as a storyteller?
You mean in terms of the development process, or in terms of the actual story, the story itself?
I would say both the development process and both when you're shooting.
This was definitely a more ambitious narrative in terms of just for the filmmaking aspect of it, because there were lots more scenes, lots more locations, lots more sort of points in the story itself. And Hump Day is like really one location, one key location, different rooms in the same house mostly, and two characters, and then a third is a strong supporting character. But it was really written in a way. It wasn't written for. We shot it in 10 days because it was so simple, and there were fewer scenes where more things take place within the scene. So it's really a very, it's meant to be done. You can do that with a very small crew and for very little money. And it was specifically kind of in that mold, made for that. This was definitely more ambitious. We had 20 days. We had twice as many days to shoot it, but even 20 days was a lot for this. And there were night exteriors where, with a lot of bicycle riding and, all kinds of challenges that we set for ourselves. Again, still for a pretty small amount of money and without an enormous number of resources. I'm a pretty efficient director, so that helps a lot.
Well, I guess I wonder if that's an efficiency. How did you find that efficiency when it went into not improvising so much anymore?
Oh, it's a different kind of thing, for sure.
I mean,
for instance, each take in Hump Day was, and Your Sister, which is highly improvised as well. The dialogue is highly improvised. We have two cameras on each side of the, looking at one character, and the other camera's looking at the other character, so that you can capture the actual the genuine reaction to the words that may never be said again in another take ever, because it's improvisation. And then, maybe a 40, sometimes I think the longest was probably a 40-minute take, and those scenes would get cut down to 5 minutes in the edit room. So again, it's really all about sort of knowing. I was an editor before, so I'm on set sort of clocking, is there enough meat in there? Do I know that I have everything I need in there somewhere, that I can find it in the edit room? And it's sort of long, meandering takes. So it's a very different kind of filmmaking. This, we had a script, we had a real script. So that is kind of all taken care of beforehand. And then if something on set is not quite feeling authentic enough or honest enough, or we're not getting that emotional catharsis that we need, we'll rewrite it. Like the three of us really did that a lot, where we'd be sure, are we sure this is the right version of the script? Never precious about the words as written, making sure it just works, and then kind of sticking to that script once we find it and tinker with it.
Do you feel like learning how to tell a story on those first few films really helped guide you into how to write a script now, so that you can shoot a movie this way?
Well, I mean, every single project I do, including the 4 years between being on the set of Laggies and being on the set of this film, which was the longest gap I've had. Usually it's been anywhere between, it's around a year and a half between films before that.
But you've been directing a lot of TV.
Being on set constantly, directing television, I mean, I can't even tell you. I felt like such a different filmmaker on the set of this film. I was like, oh my God, I have so much more confidence and sense of ease and
tools.
Just a tool bag. Yeah, a toolkit. It was really interesting. I wasn't really aware of how much I had learned doing all of that television until I got on the set of this film, and then it really struck me because it's a different feeling than when you're on the set of your own movie. It's a different feeling than being on the set of a television show. Although you're using all the same skills, but it's not your baby. It's not you're not responsible for the overall creative vision of the whole thing. So it's just a little bit of a different feeling, and getting on the set of this was like, oh my God, thank God for all that television. It was really, but every single time I'm on set, I'm learning, every day I'm on set, I'm learning something, every time I'm telling a story. It's remarkable how it accrues,
What was it like the first time you jumped on a television set?
It was insanity. I went from Hump Day, which I think we had a crew of about 8 people. It was so micro-budget. It was like this little family, 10 days of shooting, all non-union, all very, guerrilla filmmaking, DIY. And I'm holding the camera. When I'm not in a scene, and there were a couple scenes I was in, I was holding the second camera. Like, it was all very... So I go down to LA, and it's the first time I walked on a studio lot. First time I've walked into a sound stage. First time I've ever worked with a union crew, giant, everything was just, the scale of it was so big, right? And
What show was it again? Excuse me?
It was Mad Men. Mad Men was my first
you
television
went from Hump
job.
Day to Mad Men?
I went from Hump Day to Mad Men. And I literally was like, I'd been lobbying, and I met with Scott Hornbacher, I met with Matt Weiner, and I was so wanted to do it. It was my favorite show on TV at the time. And then they hired me, and I was like, wait a minute, did they make a mistake? Like, am I going to know what I'm doing? And it was incredible. It turns out that micro-budget indie filmmaking is the perfect boot camp for TV directing, because you have to make decisions quickly. You have to be quick on your feet. You have to be decisive, and you have to be efficient. You have to, in order to make your days. You have to get all the footage shot within a certain amount of time. And you have to be a good collaborator. I mean, the whole thing. And I realized, it's exactly the same job. It's exactly what I've been doing and working, finding the shape of the scene with what I love is actors, right? So working with actors. So like trying to find the shape of each scene with the actors. There's this weird myth among some people that there's nothing to do as a TV director, which could not be farther from the truth. I mean, you're needed to decide, is the ashtray going to be here or here or out of the frame? You need every decision that's made, of what you see in the frame and how. And even though your actors know their characters really well, you still in the moment have to find, what's going on performance-wise. So anyway, it turns out that indie filmmaking is really great because of just the pace, And the thing about TV is you just have more toys to play with. You just have better equipment and cranes and condors and better lighting, and then each of you're still talking to the director of photography and the costume designer and the set designer. They just have more people in their crews, a little army to get their, to follow their directions. So it's all the same.
I imagine with Mad Men, you're also talking to the writer a lot as well. You're talking to the episode writer or something sometimes.
Yeah, so on set with you while you're shooting, you have, usually, most TV shows have a producer/writer, the writer of the script with you. And during prep is the time you get with the showrunner and the head writer, in this case, Matt Weiner. So I would there's something called a tone meeting where he is able to tell you this is what I have in mind for, each, it's like a page turner. And usually on most TV shows, it lasts between an hour and maybe an hour and a half or something. I'm recalling it was about 7 hours long. And because he sees the whole thing in his head as a movie, already. And I'm just like typing every word out of his mouth. It's like 25 pages of single space, just like I'm trying to soak everything up into his brain because he's never going to be on set. Ever. I mean, he visited twice, I think. He was probably on set a total of an hour or something because he's got to be in post and writing other episodes and stuff. So you try to soak up everything that he wants and then just channel his vision. So it's exactly the same job directing television as it is to direct your own movies, but it's actually harder because you're trying to be a proxy for somebody else's creative vision, And then there's always those times, again and again, you get on a scene and you realize, well, he didn't prepare. Nobody could have prepared me for this particular scenario. You can't.
There's always something,
There's always something that
and that's like
you
another
can't think of in advance.
indie film training ground kind of thing, where there's always going to be something that you have to compromise or figure out or work around.
Exactly. Some little fire to put out or whatever. So yeah, it's really.
Can't move that car. We can't find the guy whose car that is. Okay, well, what can we do? How can we make that car part of this scene?
Hide it behind a giant. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, exactly.
So you said about 3 years between
4.
4, excuse me.
Yeah, it
And
was
so
a long time.
Where did the urge to tell this story come from? To dive into this world?
It was something that had been percolating for a long time in my head, and there are a couple things that I really love about this particular sort of setup of this particular relationship right here. And one is the way that it slow cooks over the course of 20 years. I love the idea of two people falling slowly, deeply in love over the course of that amount of time without having any real access to each other physically. Basically they can visit each other through some glass once in a while, but she can't make it down there. It's pretty far away. Very often it's mostly letter writing. It's mostly phone calls. It's that kind of distance. So it's such an interesting artificial obstruction, And then the way that it really, they're not even on each other's radar in terms of love, because of where they're at in their lives and the kind of situations that their social stations, so to speak. That's the other thing I love about this, is that it's a relationship that breaks all the rules of societal norms. When we're basically kind of prescribed a circle of people that we're allowed to fall in love with, have deep connections with platonically, or, being friends with. And then we're not supposed to be able to fall in love with somebody who's beyond a certain age range, out of our age range, or in a different place, or an ex-con, or somebody who's in a different sort of cultural milieu, or whatever it is. So I find it really inspiring. One of my favorite movies growing up was Harold and Maude, and the way they just it was endemic, or it was indicative of the way of their general unconventional personalities of saying, I'm not going to live my life the way I'm being told, that the way that I'm not going to look at this pre-written script and like follow the rules. I'm going to do it my own way and follow the beat of my own drummer. And that I just find deeply human and beautiful. There's something so gorgeous and inspiring to me about that. So that's one of the things that I really loved about exploring this relationship.
And what was it like working with Edie? Because when she was here, she said that she doesn't like talking about having deep conversations about the character or anything like that at all. She's like, am I angry? I'm angry. Let's go. Like that's how she described her performances. And I was like, that's amazing. That sounds like a director's dream.
The other thing I've learned from television is every single actor has a completely different process. It's fascinating.
It's so personal and emotional for each person to have to get to a specific place.
It is, and some people are very much from the outside in, and most people are not. But they all have different needs and desires about what they want from you or need from you as a director. Some of them really like to talk and talk and talk, and even the ones who like to talk and talk and talk, sometimes they'll talk about other different things. I don't know. It's just fascinating to me. So I love just jumping in and having to figure out. I always think of it as like there's this drawer of like all these little keys, and you're trying to find the right key for each person, like a little skeleton key for each person, and to help unlock their best performance. So
it's really sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. It's really a wonderful exercise in patience for directors, and I don't mean that you have to be patient with actors like in a babying kind of way, but you have to let them lead you to the key, to the right key.
Absolutely.
And so many directors
you can't
go in.
force your own process on them.
And it's so hard for like early directors to not know to do that, you know, because it's like, this is my vision, you have to do it this way, and directors are like, well, leave me the fuck alone.
Exactly. Yeah. And people have different boundaries and different, But, no, Edie's amazing. She and I had a Skype call. She was here in New York, and I was on the West Coast, and we had a Skype call. And she was so interesting. I mean, she basically said the same thing to me. She's like, it's really all, if the script is well written, it's all in there, And we also had a backstory Bible, like we really knew already, by the time we brought it to her, what had happened between these two characters and who they really were. But she definitely filled in her own blanks and put her stamp on things. I mean, you feel this as a real person. And the same thing with her relationship with her husband, which you see glimpses of, and her relationship with her daughter. And, and she's really, it's part of her job, obviously, but she just sort of fills that all in. And she described to me how the character sort of revealed herself to Edie, as it was really, it's absolutely fascinating. But she's so, I don't know, I can't say enough about her. She's so vibrant, but has so much depth, and you can just see everything that's happening inside of her. Emotionally, just through her eyes. We finished shooting one of the scenes that was this very intense scene, and when he first sort of professes his love to her, and afterwards Jay came up to me and said, "Our movie has a secret weapon, Edie's face."
Yeah, that's a secret.
So true. I never realized how huge her eyes are. She has these beautiful, big blue eyes, and you just like fall into them, It's really amazing.
Right, because they've always kind of been hid. I mean, not really hid, but I think of Carmela Soprano behind big eyelashes or makeup and all these things.
Very unadorned here. And that was something I wanted to get across to her, and I was hoping to, that she would be okay with. And she's like, she said, I may be unusual as an actor, but I really feel like I trust the director. I just put myself in their hands. Whatever they want me to look like, however they want me to, I don't ever usually have a lot of input about that. And she just was completely let me, create this character physically how I wanted her to look. And then I think that helped to inform who she thought the character was as well. But she was just such a beautiful collaborator. Just lovely. And this was I think this is the first indie film she's done in a while that was like so, when you're on a TV set like Nurse Jackie or The Sopranos, you've got a nice trailer and you've got a lot of nice amenities that you can kind of get used to, We had none of that, We were all up to our knees in mud every day. It's a very wet and cold.
Was it Portland or Seattle? Where was it?
No, it was in Washington State. I live in Seattle, and it was like an hour and a half north in a little hamlet in the Cascade Mountains, the foothills of the Cascade Mountains, I should say, called Granite Falls. I wanted it to not be urban. I wanted it you to feel the nature encroaching around, big, trees, and you see half clear-cut forests, up on the hillsides, the foothills, and it's sort of this vibe of like this border. You're in the border between completely natural state and civilization, civilized society, which is sort of symbolic of what's going on with these guys.
I think you do a wonderful job of depicting what is so often referred to as, rural, and in a judgmental way when it's referred to as that way. And you offer a depiction that is in no way judgmental of this area whatsoever. It doesn't feel like you're trying to depict any sort of political idea about this area or the people who live here. It's just setting a story there, and this is who they happen to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I really wanted it to have a strong sense of place, like really badly. I remember seeing right before we started shooting, I saw Hell or High Water, and I was so struck by the sense of place that film has. And I felt like I've been to East Texas now. I don't have to go there physically. I really did. And I was like, that is what I have in mind for this. I want you to feel like you've gone into this area, into the Northwest, and really get a sense of viscerally like what it's like to be there. And anyway, to wrap up what I was saying before is she showed up on set, this very small, there's no green room, there's no fancy trailers, there's nothing. The first day of shooting, she's wrapped, she's done for the day, and she says, "Oh, am I done? Can I help with craft services?" Which is the snack table, And with all sincerity, I mean, she was just like such a trooper, such a sweet soul, so kind to everybody. And, somebody of her caliber, you meet jerks all the time in this business. And it was just a delight. Yeah, she was wonderful.
You talk about developing her saying to you, "I trust you, I'll look any way that you want." Developing trust with actors isn't easy, but I'd imagine with a project like Glow as a director, you really have to have trust with those actresses because of the positions that you're putting them in, literally the positions that you're putting them in. How do you develop that? Do you show them the takes? Do you show them the camera angles? Like, how do you work with them on that stuff?
Oh, no, you never show the actors the takes. That's a big mistake, to let them see the monitors. So you avoid that at all costs.
How do you say no when one asks?
Well, they don't.
Oh, they don't?
They know.
They know.
They generally know, yeah. I mean, obviously, if it's a certain caliber, but I haven't really ever encountered that. Nobody's really demanded that.
Pretty sure Tom Cruise looks at the monitors.
Yeah, he may look at the monitors, and obviously Tom gets what he wants. But yeah.
Running correctly? Okay, we're good.
And honestly, when Glow, it's more of a matter of them trusting each other, which they certainly do because they've trained so hard together. I just got to direct 2 episodes of the 2nd season, and
I can't wait. I love that
the
show.
wrestling. Oh my, I can't even. It's amazing. I got to do the season opener and then one in the middle, and it was incredible. I love working on that show so much. That whole crew and cast, and Liz and Carly, the creators, are just incredible. And I mean, I just can't say enough about that show. Everybody should watch it. Mark Maron is a big friend of mine, and getting to direct him again, it's a perfect role for him. So, but the actresses have worked so hard, and the 2nd season, their skill set in the wrestling department is insane. I mean, they are all super good and doing these crazy, crazy stunts because they do them all. They do all their own wrestling. The only time they ever bring in anybody is stunt-wise is just because we have to do take after take after take. So trying to figure out how many takes to do and not hurt them, and there's a lot of orientation on the safety. But they're trusting each other because they're the ones doing the moves, and they've got all that dialed in before I come in with a camera to actually shoot them doing it. So it's really more important that they trust the stunt coordinator and the coordinators, and then each other, and they have established that to a T. So.
One of the wonderful things that show has going for it, I mean, the show is fantastic all around, but when you first sit down to watch it, you're like, all right, a show about wrestling, okay. Oh, this is good. Like, it has one of those great qualities of just sort of surpassing its low expectations, like within minutes of turning it on. And then sort of consistently doing that.
And I think a lot of people saw that it was about wrestling and didn't watch it because they thought, well, I have no interest in that, a certain... And then, unless you're like a wrestling fan. Yeah.
I just thought it was so entertaining.
That's insane, Ricky.
I couldn't stop.
That's a lot. That's like 13 hours.
No,
10
like
10 hours. 10 hours.
No, they're only like 20
Oh, you're
minutes.
right. They're small. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I forgot the format. I'm an
I
idiot.
have a life.
5 hours. Okay.
I have a life.
Only 5 hours of your day. That's hardly a binge at all. Yeah, it is definitely a you don't understand what you're getting yourself into. And I've heard lots of stories of people discovering it kind of late because, they're like, oh, I couldn't find anything else on Netflix. And I was like, oh, I guess we could try this, and then just like not being able to stop watching it. Just like, wait a minute, this is incredible. Yeah. It's really cool. And guys too, like women, men, like all different. I've had so many, I have this amazing, the best swag I've ever gotten from a TV show. Sometimes you get, a cool hat or a backpack or something, but there's this amazing bomber jacket that I wear everywhere that just says Glow across the back of it. And I mean, I get people coming up to me on the street just like freaking out about that show. Yeah. And when they find out I directed on it, they're like, you have something to do with Glow? That's so cool. And I was like, yeah, I got to direct, some episodes. And they're just like, what? And it's so cute. Anyway, so it has some super fans, which is great. And I hope the fan base only expands.
Yeah, you've directed some of the best shows that have been around. Like,
I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful. Yeah, I mean, amazing sitcoms, really top quality. New Girl, Mindy Project. Fresh off the boat, I did the pilot and a bunch of the episodes there. And then started getting, I think, the first real sort of shift over to the world of more like cable and streaming. I mean, I did Mad Men way back when, but was Master of None. I got to do a couple of episodes of first season. And then, started doing Hulu. I did Mark Maron's amazing show, Maron, his last season of Maron on IFC. Shameless, Love, Casual, all these great,
I love the last
great
season
shows.
Of Love.
Thank you. And I directed the series finale.
You did?
Yes.
I loved the season finale.
Thank you. We were on Catalina Island. It was crazy. Yeah.
It was a great
wonderful
season. They closed that show out very well. You closed that show out very well.
Thank you. Yeah, it was all me. Yeah.
Let's get some questions from our audience. Who's a question?
Hi. So you just mentioned a bunch of TV shows and films that you've been in. So I was wondering, what has been your favorite scene or episode that you've directed?
Oh my God, of a TV show that I've directed, well, I mean, I gotta say, the very last scene of the last episode of Love was pretty great. It was pretty exciting. What was
very sweet.
What was really fun was that we shot a bunch of options.
Really?
Yeah. We shot a lot of different versions because everybody was really, they didn't know for sure it was going to be the series finale. I think they were still hoping, they were still waiting to hear word about a season 4. But they had a feeling it might be, and they wanted to be prepared for that and to give the audience a real satisfying ending in case. And so, but even that, whether it was if it's going to continue on to season 4, we might want to make it go one way. If it's going to be the very end, we might want to make it go another way. So we shot a lot of different versions because we just wanted to make sure to give ourselves options in the edit room.
Because it's actually really hard. I mean, even if you know that that's going to be the end, it's really hard to stand by something on the day that's sort of like that sweet and that kind of a wrap up, because you don't really know even if you shoot it and you love it, you might get into the editing room and be like, oh, we went too corny or something like that. And it's not corny at all. It totally works.
Yeah.
But I could see people on the day like being like, are we going too far with this?
Just self-doubting. Yeah, you can't help it, especially with that kind of pressure. So it was great.
Rom-com ending is nothing but self-doubt, I would imagine.
Exactly. So you won't, and it really is. I've found that there are things you can't really tell until you get into an edit room, which is always mind blowing to me. I mean, how many things end up on the cutting room floor? This is a good example. Outside In has so much stuff that, I was sitting with Edie, actually watched it for the first time at South by Southwest 2-3 weeks ago, and hadn't seen it with an audience or finished yet. And she said that she kept remembering having a flashback about, she was like, what, didn't we shoot more for that scene? Or wasn't there another scene? And then immediately going, oh God, it's so much better without that. She did such a great job cutting that out. And it really was, that you want to give yourself options, but just remember, don't be precious about everything. If it's not working, you can always cut it out. So,
and you may not even know that you're giving yourself options when you're shooting the stuff on the day. You think it's
some stuff feels essential on the day, and then you get later and you realize, oh God, there's so much more to be said just with this look, and I don't need the dialogue. Yeah.
Next question, right here.
Hi. So you've talked about the difference between directing in film and directing in television. And I was wondering specifically about the difference between directing actors. Because when you're directing television, you're directing actors who have been with these characters possibly longer than you've been with them. So how do you, how do you navigate, giving them direction?
Well, again, just like on my own films, I am a big fan of backstory. I love backstory because I feel like if I and the actors know everything that's kind of happened up to the moment that the scene is taking place, it's so much easier to figure out what's going to really be going on in the scene, right? I mean, you just are the stage is set so beautifully and there's no kind of waffling about, there's no blanks to fill. So the thing that's so beautiful about television, especially if you come into a season that's, not the first season, is that these actors really know their characters. They're really deeply embedded in these people, and they by that point their characters, they fit them like a glove. They've figured out the overlap between themselves and their characters. But in the scene itself, again, you still have to find the shape of the scene. What is the emotional ride that's going to be happening? But what's the emotional dynamic? What's the point of the scene? Where are we going with it? Shaping, carving out, fine-tuning each little moment so that it doesn't just feel, like the same energy level or whatever. It's all the same. So just because an actor knows their backstory really well, that's the same in my movies. Ideally, everybody knows their backstory. It's very different than knowing exactly what they should do in this moment in the scene, and we don't need the director. It's still the fine work of like, what's happening between you and me right now, and then how is that scene going to play out, and what's the best way to find it? So it's exactly the same, really. The big difference between directing TV and my movies is that I've had zero time with the actors usually beforehand. Mad Men was such a thrown into the deep end of the pool because I literally got to maybe shake the hands of a few of the actors, but most of them, it's like you show up on set, with the scene that's about to be shot, and you have to just figure it out on the day, or maybe you've gotten information from the people who have directed them in the past, and so you can find out a little clue. Oh, this person does like to talk a lot. This person has no interest in really talking beforehand, or they need a little bit of stroking, and they need whatever. You can get a little indication, but really, and you've basically got to jump in and establish immediate trust between yourself and the person. I'm really, really grateful specifically to John Hamm, because he's number one on the call sheet. He's the star of that show, and everybody sort of follows his lead. And the fact that on day one, nobody knew me from Adam. I don't think anybody had seen Hump Day. They had no idea who I was. And he gave me so much respect, and was completely professional and just completely followed all my notes. And, he was great. He was a huge star at that time, right? So everybody else just followed suit. I feel like it could have gone a whole different way for me if he had decided to not do that.
All it takes is you trying to give him a note in front of other people and him going, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
And then that screws your entire
I wouldn't have a TV
up.
career, honestly. I'm probably, it's really true, but it just went so great.
That's one, not unheard of for an actor to do. And two, also not the worst thing that an actor could do at all. That's totally in the parameter of a normal thing for an actor to do.
Well, and there is, actors have been, a lot of TV actors especially, have been traumatized by not having great experiences with some directors, and then feeling like they really have to, they get into this mode of, I was talking to a friend of mine who's done a lot of TV, and he says, you really get into this kind of self-protective mode and feel like, okay, I had to be ready to jump in and kind of be my own director in case I don't have an actor's director. That would be one thing. I want to add this. I'm just going to do a hairpin turn, because people ask me for advice about starting as a filmmaker. What are some, pieces of advice you can give? And what I want to add to my little list of, go out and just make a movie because you don't have an excuse not to, because, equipment, so find your tribe and just make a movie and don't wait for permission. That's a really number one. Go on somebody else's set, you'll learn a lot, those kinds of. I also want to add, take an acting class.
Yes.
Because there are so many people who focus on the shots and the lenses and the lighting and making everything look beautiful and making in style and making things look cool. And then when it comes to actually directing an actor, they have no idea they have no empathy for the actor's process, because good ones make it look so easy. And it just seems like, oh, they walk on set and they just, talk, and it's easy, And when an actor asks them a question, they get freaked out, they don't know
I don't know.
Yeah, and they don't want to say I don't know, because they think that makes them look vulnerable, whatever it is. So it's learn how to talk to actors. And if you take an acting class, you'll have a sense of empathy for what the process is. I always say that everybody is working their ass off on set. Nobody is working as hard. Nobody's job is harder than the actor.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that, because there is something that is, as much as there is a craft to acting and techniques, there is also something that is kind of deep within them that it's craft will only go so far, and there has to be comfort, and there has to be a place that they can go.
Emotional safety, yeah.
Yeah, because actors get I've done a little bit of acting, not bragging. And the thing when you don't know where you're going and you don't have anyone guiding you there, it's a massive pit in your chest and everything kind of freezes up and you get terrified.
Exactly. And you want them to feel completely like they can trust and that you're not going to let them look bad on screen and that they can make a risk, because it's very risky.
Going, just be angry. Just be angry. You're going, oh, I'm really angry.
Exactly. But yeah, to be emotionally available with all those people in that weird artificial environment is much tougher, and it's really, really easy to lose sight of that and forget about that. And so, yeah, and I've heard from many different actors that they've had a lot of directors who don't know how to talk to them, so they end up having to kind of figure out how to do that themselves. And so, yeah, anyway, I'm very grateful that I've had such great interactions on television.
Yeah, I would also say that acting classes are great for people who are trying to figure out how to do it, because it teaches you what good writing is. There's nothing like working with an actor or acting that teaches you what makes a scene good and what makes an actor good in a scene.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And not to be precious about, as a writer-director, don't cling too tightly to your words, which especially if you're coming from, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but when you're coming from theater, that can be really hard, because the playwright is writing words that are just sort of sacred, and it's real. I have had worked a couple of times with folks who just have a really hard time with the idea of what if these words aren't working on the day, and letting go of the original, because if they're coming out of a specific actor's mouth wrong and stilted, and why are we clinging to them? Let's find. For me, it's like whatever works. If it's total improvisation for one actor, great. If it's for somebody else, it's just a little bit of loosening up, or I don't care. I just want you to believe the people on the screen that I'm, of the story I'm telling. I want them to feel like real human beings,
Right. Like what's more important? Your words get said as they were written right now, or we all have jobs again in a year because we made a good show.
Exactly.
I think we have time for one more question right here.
Hi. So connecting what you just said about the actors and going back to Shameless, it's one of my favorite shows, and it's such a raw show. What is it like working with that cast? Because there's a lot of weird moments on that show. And also, how did you make the decision that you wanted to direct an episode of that show?
Well, I mean, it's an amazing show, and I love, and being an actor geek, I have to say, I mean, I have been a huge fan of William H. Macy's forever. So that alone was like, easy yes, But in general, I really do love that show. I think it's really smart. I think it's really interesting. The territory they go into is really fascinating. I'm talking about this show, Shameless. And working on that show was a one-of-a-kind experience, I have to say. First of all, I think every script is probably like this. I felt like my script was 10 shows in one. It was so crazy ambitious, and I learned. Speaking of learning new things and adding to my tool bag as a director, I directed stunts with action sequences of couple mud wrestling. We had to create a commune in Griffith Park in LA with a yurt and a mud wrestling pit, and William H. Macy and a stunt guy, kind of going back and forth between the two of those to do this mud wrestling thing, and a bunch of women mud wrestling. And then there was the hot car chase in Chicago, the streets of actual Chicago. There was the shootout. There was the car crash. And then there was the baby being born on a kitchen table with the whole family just kind of making it happen. I mean, it was unbelievable. I found out that you smear a very young child, real baby, with to make them look like they've just come out of the birth canal. Just for a hot little tip here, cream cheese, KY jelly, and don't use strawberry jam because it will often make welts come out. So you want to use red currant jam, just so you know. I learned little things like that. So it was so amazing. And to work with that cast, I have to say, they all grew up together. And they are like this big, boisterous, crazy family. So when you get the group of them, it's like herding cats. Very loud cats. They're just like chattering away and trying to like wrangle them. I mean, it's actually the Ladies of Glow. It's very similar because they love each other so much, but they're just like, So I'm just like, get the bullhorn out. It's just like, all right, beautiful, gorgeous ladies. Let's move over here now, Let's pay our attention. You just have to kind of like be a little bit of a wrangler. And those, that was a very interesting experience, but incredible. I mean, here's the thing about Bill H. Macy. It's like he's a 19-year-old kid right out of acting school or something, so engaged, so passionate, so excited. And he would like come up to me and be like, okay, so the next scene, I'm so sorry. I just want to, for 1 minute. So I feel like the mud that would be on him would be sort of like half dry, but not completely dry. And I was talking about the amount. I mean, he's just like the details. Yeah. He's so in it. And he's so passionate about, just the work in a way that just is inspiring. It's just inspiring. He's such a beautiful sort of journeyman of an actor, really just not at all over it or, tired or anything. So, yeah, it was an exquisite experience.
He's never won an Oscar, has he?
Has he not?
I don't think he has. I don't think he won for Fargo.
He's one of those that's
just
insane. Yeah, that's long overdue.
Yeah,
it's brilliant. Yeah. I have to say, I just little tiny bit of pride that a couple people shouted out to me that I was the good luck charm for future Oscar winners, because two different actors who I've worked with, Allison Janney in my film Touchy Feely, Sam Rockwell in my film Laggies, both won Oscars this year. And I got to actually go for the first time. So I was sitting in the audience just like freaking out as they both came up to accept their awards. It was so exciting. And they're both, amazing, and it was long overdue. So that was really cool.
Lynn, I love the film. I love your work.
Thank you,
Congratulations. It opens this weekend, right?
It does.
Outside In.
Yep.
In theaters in New York.
The Quad in New York and the NoHo Lemley in LA and a couple other cities. And then it's going to roll out after that. Portland, Seattle, Eugene, other places on the 6th. And yeah, so a few other cities. I think Philadelphia, Chicago, here and there. Look out for it.
Lynn Shelton, everybody.
Thank
Let's hear
you.
it.